What is up, Pitt fans? Welcome to another edition of the PG Pitt Show, brought to you by FanDuel. I'm Stephen Thompson. That's Abby Schnable. We cover Pitt athletics for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And Abby, the football bye week was pretty well timed, I would say. Lines up right with the start of basketball season. You were at the Pete last night, taking in Pitt and Youngstown State. And, pretty good that we were able to do that without having to deal with a bunch of football availabilities this week.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you've got the start of the basketball season and you already have two games basketball wise, I know we're going to add in football here again in a week, but it was nice to just dip my toes in and not have to worry about an availability early this morning after not leaving the Peterson Event Center until after 9 last night.
Yep, it was, it's not always going to be this nice, but we'll take it while we can. 2 games this week. And it started last night with the season opener against Youngstown State, and we'll dive right into it. Abby, since you were in the arena while I was following along from home, want you to kind of lead us off. What was your biggest takeaway, I guess, from last night's game? I believe a 17-point win for the Panthers over the Penguins.
15 points, but
15.
yeah, I had a few takeaways, but I think my biggest one would have to be the fact that they've really, and I should preface this with Youngstown State is a Horizon League team, and they are much smaller than Pitt. However, I was really impressed with their rebounding last night, especially because that is an area that they really struggled with last year. And so when you have two guys with double-digit rebounds, one who hasn't played a lot of minutes just because of injuries and a depth and everything, I think that's really impressive. They out-rebounded the Penguins 46-24. They had 17 offensive rebounds, and Cam Corrin led with 12 of those. But Papa Kante had 10, and Papa Kante really jumped out on the page for me. And even Cam Corrin gave him his credit and said if it wasn't for Papa, he probably wouldn't have gotten as many rebounds as he did, because Papa drew 2 defenders to him, leaving Cam mostly open to grab that. And, to improve upon something like that is really impressive, just because it was pretty bad last year. And so when you have so many guys, everyone but Makari Moore grabbed a rebound, but he only played less than 3 minutes. So how can you expect really for him to grab a rebound? But everyone was hustling, which I appreciated. And it just sets things up really nicely if they're able to continue this performance off the glass.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you made a good point about kind of the team effort that it was to rebound. I think that was one thing I noticed, especially in the second half, where a shot goes up, and especially compared to the first half, you had 3 or 4 guys crashing the boards all at once. And that might be what it takes without Deshaun Jackson available. Papa Kante looked really good, and I think that's super encouraging if he's able to be an improved version of himself. But I think still it's going to take a collective effort for this team to rebound effectively, and they did that at least for a game, and that's really the most that you can kind of ask for out of a game against Youngstown State. I was really impressed with Papa Kante, right? He just looked a lot more confident kind of altogether. It wasn't just kind of on the defensive end where he was able to rebound and I think be a little bit of a deterrent at the rim. I think Pitt got a stop on something like 83, 84% of the possessions that he was on the floor for. He had the best defensive rating on the team. I was not, Cam Corrin led the team in scoring and I think rebounding. But he was really, I don't know. I just think moving forward, we've seen this from Cam Corrin before, right? Where he will dominate a smaller opponent. And then when it comes around to ACC play or something like that, he's just not as effective. Whereas I think Papa Kante still, there's some meat on that bone, right? And he can grow and develop a little bit more. So if he's able to take a step forward, that's really huge for this Pitt team, which I think is kind of, in my opinion, I'm not saying they're a center away from being a national championship contender, but they're a center away from, I think, being a somewhat competitive team. So if they are able to get a step forward from Papa Kante, if they can take a little bit of the workload off of Cam Corrin, because it's probably unreasonable to expect 23 and 12 from him every night. Kante's development is really, really critical for this team on both ends. And, I'll add that, I mentioned the more confident thing. It didn't really just show up in the rebounding or the defense, but he also didn't turn the ball over, which I felt like was a real problem for him on the offensive end last year. So, there were just times where I felt like he didn't really know what exactly he was doing out there. But so much more of a complete player in this game, and that could be really big for this Pitt team.
Yeah, like you said, he just looked poised down low. Like he was cleaning up offensive rebounds to score or kicking it out when necessary. And I liked how he played. And when you compare it to, senior Cam Corrin, who, like you said, 23 and 12, played it in 35 minutes, which is a lot of time for a center. And he even joked that like he would have been dead had he done this last season. He's in much better shape, he says. But I think the issue with Cam Corrin for me is he was just making a lot of rookie mistakes, and he's a senior. I mean, 4 turnovers when you should kind of have better ball control at that point. It was kind of frustrating. And a lot of his points, like up until the last like 4 or 5 minutes, Brandin Cummings was the leading scorer, and then Cam got some of those points last minute. And that's why, I was very impressed with Brandin Cummings, and I think we knew he was going to be good, but to see him just kind of come out the gates and like very clearly take control of this offense, I was really impressed by that. I mean, 18 points on 50% shooting from the field, like that's really efficient. And that's something Jeff Capel said that he wanted out of Brandin Cummings is for him to be efficient because they need scorers. And not only was he efficient there, but he forced 2 turnovers. Well, he stole the ball twice, and he probably forced a few more, but he just looked very poised and controlled as well. Like, I think him, Papa, and then Nojus and Indrusaitis were probably my 3, pop-out players, because specifically Brandin, like he scored 30 points before. We know he can score, but in this new system with a new point guard, when he's one of the only returners, I like that he really just came out and took control.
Yeah, and I think the backcourt is really critical here. Like I said, I don't think you can count on 23 and 12 from Cam Corrin every night, especially the 23 points. I thought Corrin was at his best when he was playing off of those guards, right? When he was catching lobs, when he was cutting off of drives. And it's not even just the guards. Like I would include Roman Siulipo.
Yeah.
Sulepo. In that as well, like he had a couple nice drives where he just dumps it off to Corrin for an easy bucket. And that's really, I feel like, Corrin's offensive game. I don't want to see him posting up as much as really he did last night or at all last year. I just don't think that's effective, and I think that leads to a bunch of turnovers, like you said. But, Nojus and Cummings being able to score like they did was really, really encouraging for me. Nojus was a guy I didn't really know what to expect from him. I think you hoped the shooting would show up, but a really nice handle, could have better than I expected. That poise that I thought Pitt really needed. And, they committed a bunch of turnovers at the beginning of the game that really bogged down their offense. But once they were able to kind of get a handle on the ball, and I think that coincided with Nojus entering the game a little bit later, as that I think he was the first sub off of the bench, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really big. If they can get some shooting on him, a little bit of ball handling, and let Cummings play as kind of a true 2. Like I don't think Brandon's really a point guard. I think he fits better as kind of a shooting guard. But you really need this backcourt to be good. So watching those guys score was, I think, encouraging. Watching Nojus shoot the ball the way that he did was really what you need. I mean, there aren't a ton of guys on this team who are outside shooters, but Cummings and Indrusaitis, they made 5 of Pitt's 6 3-pointers. I mean, shout out Cam Corrin for making that one from the top of the key, but that's not a shot that I think I want him taking a lot of this year. But yeah, I think you really do need this backcourt where they have some more depth to be kind of offensive engines. And so seeing Cummings and Indrusaitis play the way they did was eye-opening, I think in Nojus' case, but, confirmation of what this team needs from Brandin.
Yeah, and to look more at the backcourt, DeMarco Minor, their point guard, didn't score a lot. I mean, he had 8 points, so I guess that's decent. And a lot of people were asking me afterwards, like, shouldn't he be scoring more? And what I like about DeMarco Minor is that he can score when needed, but he wants to play to his teammates' strengths. And he knew that the shooters were Brandin and Nojus, and he took advantage of that. He made sure they got the ball. He made sure Cam got the ball, and I really did like how he controlled the offense. And I don't necessarily think he needs to be a shooter. I think what's good about him is he can be like a break the glass in case of emergency situation if someone else gets shut down, because he does have that ability. The one player that I was I'm not going to say disappointed because it was his first collegiate game, but I would really like to see Amari Witherspoon step up a little bit. It felt like he was a little bit frazzled, especially just, at the beginning, he had 3 turnovers. Not at the beginning, but he looked off, and I know it's his first game, so I'm going to hopefully that's the reasoning there. But if this Pitt team wants to, get some wins that they probably wouldn't usually get, he needs to be a little bit more in the mix, because I do think you have a really solid group of, Brandin, DeMarco, even Corin a little bit, Nojus, and Papa. And if you can get, and Roman too, he didn't score a lot, but Roman did some good things. But if you can get Amari and Barry Dunning Jr. to play a little bit cleaner, I think that opens up a lot of opportunities for this team.
Yeah, I think Minor has a very specific role on this team. Like, if he doesn't score a lot, that's not really a big deal in my mind. He needs to be able to pass and defend. He needs to be able to facilitate, because he is the best ball handler on this team, and he's the most experienced point guard that they have. And probably really the only true point guard that I think they have on this team at this point. So, yeah, I'm not super concerned about his scoring. He didn't shoot the ball terribly well, but his ability to, 6 rebounds and 3 assists, you'd like a little bit more assisting and facilitating, but, I'll take him doing all of the dirty work stuff. And I agree with you on Witherspoon. That was a guy I was really high on and did look a little rushed, but, I think you can chalk that up to first collegiate game, and he was forcing a little bit, maybe pressing a little bit too much, putting a little bit more pressure on himself than he needs to. So, not super worried about that, but yeah, I was really encouraged by the backcourt and by Roman. He's not a guy that I'm counting on to score a ton either. I think he kind of looked exact as advertised. I think I texted you that at some point during the game. But I love 6 rebounds. He had a huge block and a steal. So I think he gave you some of the splashy defensive stuff that you really wanted. He rebounded. And he showed a little bit of straight line drive, shot creating ability. So I think an encouraging game from him and from most of the backcourt. If you can get Amari Witherspoon to be a little bit more confident, then I think you've really got something there. And I think you can have some stuff to really be encouraged by. The thing and I mentioned this earlier, but the turnovers at the beginning of the game were a little worrisome, because this also happened against Pitt Johnstown, and it really bogged down their offense.
Yeah, I mean, 18 turnovers is not great, with Cam Corin having 4, Nojus and Amari Witherspoon having 3 each, and then a lot of everyone else except for Barry Dunning Jr. and Papa Kante and Makari Moore each added a turnover, which allowed, Youngstown State to have 15 extra points. So if you think about it, clean up the turnovers, and this game isn't even as remotely close as it was. And I know 15 points is a lot, but for majority of the game, it was a lot closer. It didn't really extend that lead until within the last 10 minutes. But yeah, that's just something you're not going to be able to do against high major teams, against power conference teams. And so I really hope that they focus on turnovers. And even Jeff Capel talked about it, that he was pretty disappointed with the amount of turnovers, and he's excited to get to work because he knows that these guys can control the ball better. But I really hope that they use, the next 2 games against Longwood and Eastern Michigan to practice that, clean that up a little bit, so that you're ready to go against West Virginia, which is their first power conference team of the season. But yeah, just some errors that you wouldn't have expected, I think.
Yeah, and they played a decent offensive game. They shot it decently well from 3. They were at 35%. They scored, more than 1 point per possession, which is generally pretty good. They did that all while committing 18 turnovers. Mm-hmm. That number in half, you're up inside the 80s. You're probably closer to 85 points in this game, which would be a much better output. And conversely, you held them to 59 points, but I think you allowed something like, want to say, yeah, it was 15 points off turnovers. So
Mhm.
this game just looks very different if you even cut that turnover number in half, which still, 9 turnovers isn't great, but it's a lot better than 18. So yeah, it's the turnovers are really the only thing limiting the offense, especially early, and that's just kind of discipline, not rushing yourself, making sure the ball doesn't stick, which I thought was a problem at times last night too. Like it happened to them last year as well, where they just waited so long to get into offensive sets. And in the second half, when the ball, especially early in the second half, when the ball was moving more, Pitt found good shots pretty easily, and they were making a good bit of them. But it was when they were holding on to the ball for a long time, when they weren't moving a ton. It was when the ball stuck. It's when they were forced into tough shots. It's when they were rushing themselves. So they can really help themselves if they just move a little bit better, if there's a little bit more discipline in terms of, getting the ball over half court quicker and not just waiting for a ball screen and trying to run offense off of that. Like everybody's got to be moving all the time, and it takes some discipline, but also some chemistry too. I'm not
Yes.
discounting the fact that this is really their first real live game action that this group has played together. I know they played an exhibition against Providence, but that's definitely a different environment than a regular season game. So I think there's a lot of growing for this team to do, but definitely some things to be encouraged by. I think they're pieces on this team. They show
Yes.
that in this game, and I think you just got to hope that they can continue to improve and go from there.
Yeah, like you said, a lot of good pieces. I mean, if you can get the chemistry going, because last night I feel like there were a lot of miscommunications. There were multiple times I heard DeMarco Minor not yelling, but like instructing someone to go to a better spot. And once they get into better rhythm, that's going to happen a little bit less. And for all of that to say, I don't really think they played terribly. I think they actually looked
Mhm.
better than I expected, just because you never know when you're playing with a team of essentially all new people. And then other than Cam Corrin and DeMarco Minor, and I guess Barry Dunning, but he didn't play a lot. This is a very inexperienced team as well. Like, yeah, Roman Salepa has the Australian pro experience, but that's a lot different than NCAA. And so to see them kind of figure it out eventually is optimistic for me. And you can't discredit Youngstown State. That's a team that is going to chase a Horizon League title. That's a team that is fairly good, that was missing one of their bigs in Vlad. I can't think of his last name, but and so the fact that Pitt was able to figure the stuff out, make in-game adjustments, I thought that was really good, because when you are able to make in-game adjustments, that sets you up for success later down the line, because you know how to fix things from top to bottom so that you're playing better basketball, so that you're able to take up a bigger lead and feel pretty comfortable at the end of the game.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And I know expectations aren't particularly high going into the season. I mean, according to our friends at FanDuel, as of right now, as of this morning, Pitt had the 10th best odds to win the ACC at plus 4,000. And if you wanted to take some action on them winning the national title, it's plus 30,000. So, yeah, and, you're picked 14th in the preseason poll. Sure, Deshaun Jackson's medical issue played into that as well. But I wrote about this week. I think it's fine to take a longer term view with this team, right? Like, given what they're dealing with right now and given who's on the roster, given the expectations, if you are looking at the season and evaluating it based on raw wins and losses, I just think you're going to have a bad time. And you probably don't have to tune in this year. But I get the impression that this is a team and this is a program, given the fact that they hired a general manager. I think you look at some of the recruiting wins that they've gotten, just this fall. Really, they have I believe a top 10 recruiting class right now. Things are pointed in the right direction if you are taking a longer term view. And I know no one wants to hear that, right? Like this is year 8 with one NCAA tournament appearance, and past 3 years, there have been high expectations that more often than not have not been met. But look, this is just the reality of this team. And until I hear that Jeff Capel is getting fired, we have to treat it as if he's going to finish out his contract or at least coach the next 2 years. And so to that end, there are some really good players coming in next year. And I think you've got some pieces on this team. And so I think this year should be a lot about figuring out who you want to retain, who are these guys that you want to prioritize to keep them out of the portal, see what these young guys can bring for you, and then try to supplement it with figure out what your transfer needs will be, right? How can you supplement this roster around the names that you're returning and bringing in next year? I'm not as I don't know. We're a long way from that really great recruiting class arriving. We have to see what this team can be. But like I said, I wrote about it this week. I think there should be there's well-earned optimism around this team that I guess I don't know. Maybe not well-earned optimism. I guess I should rephrase that and say that there are reasons for optimism around this team that I think fans and spectators should all there's a reason to tune into this team even if they don't win a ton of games this year.
Yeah, even if it's as simple as watching the growth of some of these younger guys. I mean, majority of the squad is underclassmen. I mean, if we're looking far ahead, you lose Cam Corrin, DeMarco Minor, and Barry Dunning of the players that played yesterday. And yeah, a point guard is a little bit difficult to replace, but Pitt has been pretty good at finding them out of the portal within the past, like I'd say 5 years. I mean, Nelly Cummings. And then DeMarco Minor, I think he has a pretty high ceiling. And so even if you're just watching to see how Brandin Cummings develops, to see how Nojus Indrusaitis develops, or even Papa Kante, like all of those guys like played well. And other than Brandin, none of them have very many minutes. Brandin, even then, only averaged 6, I think, from last season. And so I'm excited for that element. And I also think this is a team that could sneak out some wins that they probably shouldn't be winning, because I think they like you said, they have the pieces, and when lightning strikes, they'll be able to, pull out some wins that maybe they shouldn't. And I think that's exciting too, even though you're not necessarily expecting the squad to make an NCAA tournament. If they can just have, fun, develop, win some games against power conference teams, and then you just kind of, like you said, you got to rest on your laurels a little bit, not laurels, but like rest on your recruiting class that's coming in, and hope that everything comes together next season. Everyone wants the instant gratification of, oh, we brought in these guys and now we're going to go to an NCAA tournament, and that works for some programs, but I like the trajectory that Jeff Capel is on with this team. I can see the vision. I think it's unfortunate that Deshaun Jackson is likely out for the season. If not, I mean, if he comes back, it probably won't be a lot of games. And so I like what they've done so far, game 1. And I can see the growth. I can see the vision, which sets them up nicely for next season or even the season after. Because again, this team is very young.
Yeah. And I'm not going to sit here and tell anyone that like they should be happy with the results of this year or the results of the past 2 years. Like that's not what I'm saying, but I don't know. I'm just trying to, like I said, until I learn that Jeff Capel is getting fired, like we got to try to find the ways that we're trying to understand, I think, the vision that Pitt is trying to build. And at least for now, like you said, I can see at least a little bit of what they're trying to do with this team. Whether or not it actually works out, we'll see, and we will cover it all in much detail. But until then, I am looking at these young guys and seeing how they grow and develop and seeing what Pitt can try to put together for next year. That's all for this episode. Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to PG Pitt on YouTube, and follow all of our written work at post-gazette.com. Plenty on football, basketball, and volleyball on there coming for you guys this week. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.